All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to visually document a single market cycle for the US 100, and we'll be using this really unique, purely geometric system called the market DNA method. Let's dive in and see how this all plays out.
So here's the big question, right? Can you actually document a market cycle using only geometry? I mean, think about it. No traditional indicators, no fundamental analysis, no news headlines, just shapes on a chart. It sounds kind of wild, but that's exactly what we're going to observe here. We're going to look at the initial plan, watch the events unfold, and then see the final results.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, a quick look at what the market DNA method is. Then we'll see the plan in phase 1. After that, we'll watch the actual events unfold, covering phases 3 and 2. Then we'll see the outcome in phase 4, and we'll finish up with a quick performance summary. Let's get to it. All right, section 1, the market DNA method. Let's take a closer look at this visual approach. So, what exactly is market DNA? Well, it's a proprietary geometric system, and its whole purpose is to document market cycles. Now, the key thing here, and this is really important, is that it does this without using any of the traditional tools. We're talking no technical indicators, no fundamental analysis. It's a completely self-contained system. Okay, that brings us to phase 1, the plan. This is the setup for the entire US 100 cycle. It's where we lay down the geometric structure and define all the parameters right from the get-go. All right, take a look at this. This is the US 100 chart back on November 21st, 2025. You can see this whole geometric structure has been applied right over the price. Now, the plan identifies a primary entry level, you can see it right there at point M, and that's exactly where the price is sitting. There's also a second, optional entry point to find a bit lower at P of C. Okay, let's talk about the risk preview, because this is where the plan really gets down to brass tacks. Everything here is based on a hypothetical $100,000 in capital. And right up front, the max allowed drawdown is set at 5%, which is $5,000. You can see a bunch of other key parameters that are part of this plan too, like the 54-day trapezoid time duration, a risk coefficient of 2, and all of this feeds into a calculated trade size of 0.07. So you might be wondering, how do they even get to that trade size? Well, the source material gives us this exact explanation. I'm going to read it verbatim. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size. So it's a very specific calculation based on those inputs. Okay, so based on that whole setup, the plan lays out two possible scenarios. Scenario 1 is pretty straightforward. What happens if only that first entry at M gets hit? The expected profit there is about $1,062. Then you have scenario 2. This is what would happen if the price dropped and also triggered that second entry at P of C. In that case, the total expected profit jumps up to over $2,000 or about a 2.17% return. All right, so that was the plan. Now for the fun part. Let's see what actually happened. We're moving on to the events as they played out. And you'll want to pay attention here because the sequence is a bit unusual. We're actually going to see phase 3 happen before phase 2. And wow, things got moving fast. Just 5 days later, on November 26th, the price shoots up and hits this point right here, labeled Apex N. In the market DNA method, that event completes phase 3. And it's super important to notice that the price rallied straight to this point. It never dipped down to hit that optional P of C entry level. Then, just a few days after that, on December 1st, we get our next big event. The price keeps moving up and makes contact with this line here, which is called the delayed mirror. That touch right there completes phase 2 of the cycle. So just to be clear on the order of events, which is pretty interesting, we had phase 1, the plan, then price action completed phase 3, and then it completed phase 2. So, phases 3 and 2 are in the books. The big question is, what happens next? Well, that brings us to the final act, phase 4, the outcome. This is where we get to see the cycle come to a close. And here's how it all wrapped up. After completing phases 3 and 2, the price kept going. If you look closely at the chart, you can see it pushed all the way up to the top boundary of this big blue trapezoid. After hitting that, it actually reversed and came all the way back down to touch the lower boundary. And just like that, by December 17th, the entire documented journey of this cycle was complete. Okay, so the full cycle played out, but the real test, right, is how did the results compare to the original plan we saw back in phase 1? Let's put them side to side and see. And wow, this table really lays it all out. Remember scenario 1? That's the one that played out since that second entry was never hit. The planned return was 1.06%, and the actual realized return came in at 1.03%. Super close. Now look at the drawdown. The plan allowed for a max of 5%. The actual drawdown? A tiny 0.4%. That's a huge difference. And finally, the time frame. It was planned for 54 days, but the whole thing wrapped up in just 29. Pretty efficient. Okay, before we finish up, we have to cover some really important disclaimers. First and foremost, nothing you've seen here is financial advice. This is all for documentation and public verification only. The source material is also very clear that risk management is always up to the user. And with this method, using leverage above 10 is prohibited. And finally, a crucial rule: never invest essential personal funds. And there you have it. That's the complete visual documentation of one single US100 cycle using the market DNA method. We saw the plan, we watched the events unfold, and we reviewed the final outcome. It's a fascinating, purely observational way to look at the market. If you're curious and want to learn more, you can check out the source website at marketdnaedge.com. Thanks for watching.